Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Chance to Start Over Again by Kalokagathia. Luffy's dream came true, but what's the meaning of accomplishing his dream without his Nakama around? So he's going to go back and start over. Time travel, what else? I don't own anything. Member list. Taz Peterson, Yonko. Leilani Morris, Warlord. Garrick Russell, Warlord. Black Money _ Young Lion, Warlord. KSG PL4 YZ, Warlord. Adios.
This is Ace. Ace, meet Kora-san and Tor. Luffy gets cut off by Law, yet he still grins. Law says while glaring at the two, he can't help it, it's been a habit for him. Ow. Sabo, this is Kora-san and Tor. Luffy ignores Law and he still continues while Law's eyebrow twitches in annoyance. Law says again while Ace and Sabo kept quiet, Ace glaring at the two while Sabo looks at the two. Ow. Luffy says again while Law twitches his eyebrow in annoyance again but only sighs. After that was silence and cricket sounds in the background. Ace, of course, being hot-headed out of all of them, snapped. Why did you brought people with you? What if they did something to you or? Ace gets cut off by Luffy's blank face. I saved them from dying. Luffy says nonchalantly while Sabo was wide-eyed along with Ace. You, of all people? You can't even punch properly? Ace says mockingly while Corazon and Law were confused. Law wanted to talk but Luffy didn't allow him to. She, I just helped them escape from bandits. When they were out of sight I just helped them along the way. You can't believe what happened through all these 3 months. Luffy says cheerily while Corazon and Law were more confused, before Law frowned and whispered to Corazon. Go along the flow, there's something wrong. Law whispers to Corazon, who just nodded before lighting his cigarette. What happened? What happened? I bet you had to make them help you to not get eaten or beaten up by people. And you sailed for a vacation. You're lucky the Sea Lord of the Coast didn't eat you. Ace shouts while Corazon and Law sweat dropped. They were thinking the opposite thing that Ace just said. And we were so worried we could have sailed on our own just to find you. What if a pedophile caught you or someone tried to buy you off? Okay. Luffy was sure Ace's brother complex just got upgraded. But the two helped me, so they're our friends from now on, Luffy says while Sabo and Ace looked at Corazon and Law suspiciously. You wouldn't have helped Luffy if you had no intentions. Ace says warily while Corazon's eye widens. He was about to say something, but Law cut him off. We simply did it as thanks to Luffy, we're eternally grateful for what he did. Law says while Luffy grinned wider as he saw Law going with it, which didn't go unnoticed by all of them. I see, thanks for helping Luffy live through all of it, but we can't help you guys anymore. Sabo says with a cold tone, which made Luffy frown. Let's make a secret base then, we'd need it in the future anyway, Luffy says with a pout, which made the two change their minds. Fine, Ace says quietly with a blush before going to the bandits' hut. Luffy's soon-to-be brothers. Law and Corazon was wide-eyed. They never knew Luffy was so good at building things. Luffy, I never knew you were good at building things, Sabo says as Ace nods in agreement. Luffy was expertly hammering a nail as if he did it for thousands of times. Really? She. I guess I'm a prodigy in it, Luffy says cheerfully, yet in the back of his head, he was remembering some things. Flashback. Luffy looked at the burned-down Thousand Sunny. I'll make sure I can make a great boat using your things, Sunny, Luffy said as he silently cried at the Thousand Sunny as he was touching it. He lost all his Nakama after all. Present, I always use it in traveling. Frankie would have been so proud of me if he saw this. Luffy says in his thoughts as he was unconsciously creating the base. The brothers helped him, of course Corazon and Law also did, make the base. She. We made our secret base. It's so cool. Luffy shouts childishly while he was inside the base. Corazon and Law sweat drop when Luffy climbed like a monkey. We could use this to hide on Shitty Gramps too. Ace says as the soon-to-be brothers shivered. Even Luffy was in the future. He still can remember the trauma his Gramps gave him like it was yesterday. Shitty Gramps? Corazon asks while frowning. Kids shouldn't know foul languages for his case though. Shitty Gramps is Shitty Gramps. Luffy says while he was shivering. Sabo was in the corner saying rainbow of curses while shivering. Okay. Corazon says awkwardly as they slept in the new base. Little did they know that the kids are adult for Luffy's case. Worst nightmare was about to become theirs. Shitty Gramps alert. Ace yells as he ran with the speed Corazon and Law didn't know of, considering they didn't know this Shitty Gramps. Grandpa. Luffy says in disbelief as he chokes on his meat while at the base. Sabo shivered and searched for a hiding place while Ace was turning blue of imagining and meeting his gramps. Law and Corazon tilted their heads in confusion. Why are you so scared of your grandfather? Does he abuse you in some way? Law asks while Ace looks at him like he has two heads. Somehow, it's not, somehow, that shitty gramps abuse us with him and his fist of love. Ace yells in anger while he was imagining the bad scenes that could happen. Luffy was shivering in fear but wasn't hiding. He could find us here, even if we built our base. Gramps has a great sense of sensing us. Luffy says he was turning blue of what was about to happen. Sabo and Ace nodded even though they don't know Haki. But they know what Luffy meant about their Gramps having a great sense of sensing them. What should we? Sabo was cut off by their grandpa. Your grandpa is here. Garp yells while Ace, Sabo, and Luffy immediately ended their conversation, both paled as white as a sheet. Their shitty Gramps climbed with a devilish grin. Did you miss Corazon? All of them looks at Corazon, who had his eyes wide open and his cigarette fell to the floor. Garp-san. Corazon says in disbelief while Luffy exhaled for a minute before calming. Luffy knew about it. Considering his grandpa was kind, he has a chance to be accepted by grandpa. What are you doing here? Garp asks the stunned Corazon. Garp didn't think that he would find the long-lost Corazon. Do you know each other? Law asks Corazon while Garp sighs and grins at them. Kids, go hunt somewhere. Me and this guy need to talk. Okay. Garp says as Luffy looks blankly at Garp. Luffy sighed for a second and grins at him. Let's go, guys. Croco, delay, Luffy says as he runs to outside, laughing, being the overprotective soon-to-be brothers the three are. Yes, I included Law. They quickly followed Luffy. This is the weakest sea of the four blues. Speaking of the weakest, was Luffy born from here? He's too strong, and he's hiding it. Why? Law says in his thought as he runs towards Luffy, his overprotective mode running wild. Law sweat dropped. Luffy yaw is quite good at acting. Law says in his thoughts as he saw what happened in this past hours. Only what he saw was Luffy getting beaten by his brothers in 100 fights and pretending to get hurt, which didn't go unnoticed by Law's sharp eyes. Luffy acting like an idiot, etc. Law sighed. Luffy yaw, can I talk to you? Luffy looks at Law and tilted his head in confusion. At the same time he didn't miss the wary and guarded looks that Ace and Sabo gave at him. Okay. Luffy says cheerfully as he let Law drag him and give his soon-to-be brothers, don't follow us look, which got a response by groans and glares at him. After Law got Luffy and dragged him into a place where no one could hear what they're saying. Luffy yaw, why are you hiding your true strength to them? It's not like it's forbidden or something, right? Law asks while Luffy just laughs and shakes his head, which made Law more confused. Keep this a secret, and it's a secret, shi. Luffy says while leaving a confused Law. Luffy grinned at his thought, Tora will know someday. After that, Luffy and the others came back to the base. What they saw was Luffy's grandpa or shitty Gramps with Corazon drink. Luffy wasn't a bit surprised, knowing Garp was kind. Luffy grins and surprisingly hugged his grandpa, which surprised Ace and Sabo mostly as Law and Corazon was shocked too. Luffy hugged his grandpa like he wouldn't be able to see him again, which of course shocked his grandpa. Garp looked surprised at his little grandson's action. Luffy never did that to him. She, grandpa. I love you, Luffy said while grinning at Garp, while Sabo and Ace had their jaws dropped. Luffy must have broken his head when he got eaten. Ace yells while Sabo turned blue. Did shitty Gramps did something to Luffy? Luffy never said that to his grandpa, well only this time. Luffy still remembered it like it was Ace's death. Flashback, Grandpa, why did you have to leave us? Me and Sabo will be alone, you know? The Pirate King says as tears were streaming at his face. There he stood, in Garp's headstone. Luffy's memories of his grandpa was flashing through his mind. Luffy smiled. Now that he remembered, his grandpa only did was train him even with abuse, but still care for him and telling him not to go on the wrong path. If only he was able to show more affection. Come on, Luffy, we need to go. Marines might come back here anytime now, Sabo says with his eyes shadowed, but he still can see the tear stains at Sabo's face. Luffy didn't want to go anytime now, but at the same time, he needs to. Present Garp was at lost. He never heard Luffy say that to him. His eyes suddenly showed affection and he was grinning happily. But Garp was so happy at Luffy saying that he can't help have tears in his eyes. Bawahahaha. What made you say that to me? Garp asks with affection, which undoubtedly shocked all of them, except for Luffy. Luffy burrowed deeper in Garp's chest and repeating, I love you, to Garp who was grinning at Luffy while crying a little because this was a precious moment for him. While Luffy was extremely happy, to say something like that to his grandpa made him so happy. He felt so satisfied, he felt so relaxed at Garp hugging him and grinning at him. If he had shown this a long time ago, would Garp also hug him, even after being the Pirate King? After rebelling in the world government? Luffy's heart clutched at the thought, but for now, he'd enjoy this moment. Luffy would repeat, "I love you," to his grandpa as many times as he can because there'll be a time he won't be able to do it anymore. Luffy hugged his grandpa tighter before looking at him. "Grandpa, I might not become a Marine, but I'll always love you, even if the world government becomes corrupt. I'll never replace my grandpa to another grandpa," Luffy says as he was grinning, even though it already is corrupted. "But you're different." He'd accept the fist of love. Luffy burrowed his head at Garp's chest, preparing for Garp's fist of love. Garp hugs Luffy tighter, his hands raising. Ace and Sabo widened their eyes and ran towards Luffy to protect him from the fist of love. "I won't replace my grandsons too, but you should become a Marine. I don't like having my grandsons get the wrong path. I'd hate to see my grandsons getting hurt. I love my grandsons anyway," Garp says while patting Luffy, who was shocked, in the head. Ace and Sabo stopped and slightly blushed at hearing "I love my grandsons" from Garp, who was laughing at their reactions. Law and Corazon looked at the touching scene, smiling. Luffy never heard "should" from his grandpa, especially in saying that they will be Marines, no matter what. It's usually "will" or "never be a pirate," but Luffy never heard his grandpa say that word in a pleading manner. Luffy grinned and released his hug at Garp. Instead, he took Sabo, Law, Ace, and Corazon's hand and made it turn into a group hug. She. Luffy laughs when Ace incredibly blushes. As Sabo wasn't better and Corazon and Law was only blushing a little from the sudden contact. For the first time, Garp patted Ace, Sabo, Law and Luffy's hair, while ruffling Luffy's at the process, and didn't give them a first of love. Instead, it was patting their hair, ruffling for Luffy also, and a grin from Garp. All of them, except Luffy, Law, and Corazon, thought it was a miracle. "How were you able to do that?" Ace asks while Luffy tilts his head in confusion. "Do what?" Luffy asks while he stops waving at Garp, who was already in the distance. "Tricking shitty Gramps and not making him give his fist of love?" Ace says while Law and Corazon widened their eyes. Tricking their grandfather and giving him false love was cruel, but it was stomped flat by Luffy's word. "I never tricked Grandpa, I wanted to say it to him. There might be a time where I'll never see him again," Luffy says while he looks grim once again at the last sentence as Ace and Sabo was shocked. "But why? I thought you said you hated shitty Gramps," Ace says in disbelief as Sabo followed by nodding in agreement. She, I love Grandpa. He might abuse us in training, but he loves us too. He never wanted to let us be a pirate because he never wanted us to go on the bad path, but I will still achieve my dream," Luffy explains while Ace and Sabo had their eyes and mouth wide open at Luffy's words. It felt so honest and so filled with happiness and affectionate that it almost made Ace and Sabo think twice of hating their shitty Gramps. "Now then, let's eat," Luffy shouts as he runs in the forest, which made Ace and Sabo's face go terrified of the thought of Luffy being eaten, and they quickly ran, following Luffy. Law and Corazon smiled and followed the three soon-to-be brothers. "We shouldn't have to keep secrets from each other, now, should we?" Ace and Law says with a serious face as Luffy flinches slightly. "Spill it," Ace and Law says at the same time, which almost scared Sabo and Luffy for how the same their face and voice are. Suddenly Law and Ace attacked Sabo. "Just tell us already, you idiot, I'll kick your face in," Ace shouts as he and Law choked Sabo to death. Luffy tried, not serious though, to stop Ace and Law from killing Sabo. "Gwarg, alright. I'll talk, Sabo says as he finally gave in. After Ace and Law finally calmed down, Sabo had a grim expression. Sabo took a deep breath. "The son of a noble," Ace shouted in surprise, but his eyes were only wide. "Who is?" Luffy shouted, trying to act that he was surprised. "I am," Sabo shouts in annoyance. So, Ace, Law, and Luffy chorused, while Law looking bored as Ace and Luffy dug their pinky finger on their nose. "You're the ones WHO wanted to know," Sabo shouts with a tick mark on his head, comical shark teeth, and angry eyes. "The truth is, both of my real parents are still out there. I'm not a real orphan, and I wasn't born on the trash heap either." Sabo pauses with a grim expression on him once again. "The man who was trying to stop me just now was my father. I'm sorry I had to lie to you," Sabo said as he looked on the ground, guilty obvious in his face. "I'm actually pretty shocked by this. If you were born into a noble household, why would you end up on the trash heap?" Ace says as he turns his back on Sabo. Sabo remembered the memories he had on that place. It was nothing but being caged. All they care about was having an heir to protect the family's status and fortune. Sabo says as he pauses with a grim tone, "They never cared about me. If I couldn't marry into a royal family, then I was worthless. They made me work day in, day out to improve my chances. My parents were always fighting because I wasn't good enough for them. There was never any place for me in that house." Sabo pauses again. "This may be kind of rude to you guys, but I was always alone, even though I had parents. There was a pregnant pause between the four soon-to-be brothers, then suddenly Sabo stood up. Law, Ace, Luffy, Sabo looked at them in the eye. We have to make it out to sea someday. We'll leave this country behind and gain our freedom. Sabo looked at them with determination in his eyes. I want to see the world in all its glory and write a book about all the things I find. If it's sailing I'm studying for, then I don't care how hard I have to work. We've got to get stronger and become real pirates. I don't need you to tell me that. I'm gonna become a pirate, beat every last person who stands in my way, and earn myself the kind of glory that dreams are made of. Only then will my life have been worth living, Ace shouts as he grins. I don't care if the whole world refuses to accept me. They can hate me all they like. I'll become a great pirate and prove I'm better than them all. I won't run from anybody. I'll never lose. I don't care if they end up terrified of me. I'm just gonna make sure the whole world knows my name. Luffy giggles and whispers to Law, who is amused by all the shouting. Go with the flow, she, Luffy says while Law smirks and nods. Luffy stepped one step forwards and also shouts, then I'm. Huh? Law, Sabo, and Ace chorused as they looked at Luffy's deadpanned expression. After a few moments Sabo laughed as Ace and Law sighed. Of all the things you could come out with, Ace says as he sighed again. Sabo laughed more. Ahahaha. Man, you're one crazy guy. Sabo says while Law smirks at Sabo's words. He was sure it was true. You're one to keep an eye on, that's for sure. Law says while Luffy grins at them. She. Luffy laughs while grinning more brightly on them. But is it gonna be a problem if all four of us want to be a captain? Sabo says while he was on his thinking mode. Yeah, that could be an issue. I always thought you were gonna be my navigator, Sabo. Ace says as Law was also thinking. Luffy decided to lighten up the tensed atmosphere since they were thinking too much. What? You guys should just join my ship, Luffy shouts while he grins. The three shouted a no, which made Luffy pout, but at least things were pretty good now. Luffy and the other two were waiting for Ace to come. Ace said about something and Luffy was sure about it. The day where they became brothers. Luffy was grinning like a madman. He'd be their brother again. Finally, after popping out in his thoughts, Ace came with a sake on his hand. Did you know, you guys? Ace asks as he opens a sake and had 4 cups on their table, which they called, but it's actually a cut down tree. Well, we can decide the details when the time comes. Ace placed down the sake. Who knows, maybe we'll all end up forming our own separate crews. Then Law notices something. That's Dayton's booze, isn't? Law says while he sweat drops. If you exchange drinks, then we can be brothers. Ace says as if Law didn't say anything. Law just shrugged it off. He was excited too. Luffy grinned widely and so bright that it can rival the sun's light. Law and Sabo smiled in excitement. When we become pirates, we may not be able to end up in the same crew, but the bond of our brotherhood we share will never die. Ace paused. No matter where we are, or what we do, this is one bond we can never break, Ace says as he pours a sake on the 4 cups when he was done. All 4 of them raised their cups. Starting today, we, Ace grins widely, are brothers. The 4 grinned happily. Yeah, the 3 yells as they drink the sake. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. The 4 bonded, bathed together, ate together, survived together, and the most important thing was, they were brothers. And Luffy wasn't about to let one of them go out of his sights. You're a pitiful captain and selfish captain. Why weren't you there to save me? Nami says while she was on the ground, blood oozing in her everywhere. Luffy was in pain, but his Nakama's pains were stronger. What? I tried to protect you. I wasn't just strong enough. Luffy was cut off by Zoro, who was standing, bleeding horribly. Sorry isn't enough. You should have died with us. Because of you, I couldn't become the strongest swordsman in the world. You were pitiful. You couldn't save us. You were too weak. Zoro says while Luffy cries, his heart clenching horribly. Usopp was next. He was in the same situation as the two. You weren't able to protect us. That was your sin. I thought you said you wouldn't let any of us die. What you said wasn't true, wasn't it? Usopp says while Luffy can't help but cry more. He was a useless captain. FY. Strange, it didn't sound that it was one of his Nakama. It was your sin. You should have died with us. We could have been happier. Robin says as she was leaning on the broken wall. Her hands were cut off. We were alone. Why did you have to let us be alone? Chopper says as Luffy turns to Chopper. He was crying. After all, he was the youngest. He wasn't supposed to see things so horrible like this. It made Luffy more guilty. Uffy. K up. MMIT. Luffy falls on his knees and cries. I'm sorry, I couldn't protect you, Luffy almost shouted. He was guilty about everything. Everything that happened was all his fault. That's why you should have died. Sanji says as he was standing. You should have died for us. You should have come with us, Frankie says as he was walking towards Luffy with a burned down body. I'm sorry, I should have died, Luffy says weakly. Wake, Luffy. Jinbei was next to him, yet he couldn't save him. Die with us, it'll atone for your sin, the sin to let us die. Nami says, choking Luffy with her bloodied hands. Your hands are stained with blood, our blood. Jinbei says as Luffy weakly raised his hands as he was unable to breathe. His eyes widened. It was blood, so much blood. I'm sorry I was too weak, Luffy says in his thoughts while Nami was choking him. Every nakama he had was looking down at him. Everyone was. Luffy, I'm sorry I lived. I lived to just kill you guys. I achieved my dream, but, Luffy says in his thoughts while he was going to close his eyes. Luffy suddenly was brought back to the real world. He was panting badly, he couldn't breathe. He felt himself crying, it was humiliating. Are you alright, Luffy? Did you had a nightmare? Law asks worriedly. Sabo checked on him as Ace was worried the same. Luffy nodded. Too dazed about his dream. You should have just died. It must have been a horrible dream if you weren't able to breathe and you were screaming pretty loudly. Ace says as he was sitting, still checking on Luffy. Don't scare us like that, idiot. Sabo slumps himself at the ground. After a few minutes and Luffy stopped shaking, he finally asked what he wanted to say. Should I have died? Luffy says quietly with emotionless eyes as the three was shocked. What are you saw? Ace was cut off by Luffy's eyes. He was shocked, it looks too old. Am I useless? Am I weak? So weak I can't protect a person? Would you leave me if my hands were stained? Am I better off dying? Luffy was cut off by being punched in the face from Law, with his eyes on sharp glares to Luffy. Don't you ever say that. Law says while Ace stands up next to Law. Sabo just looks sadly at Luffy as he helps him stand up. You aren't useless, Sabo says as he smiles sadly at Luffy. And you're not better off dead. Ace finishes as he also sadly smiled. You helped us when there were people trying to kill us, Law says as he found Luffy's eyes on him. You helped us let Ace accept the truth about himself, Sabo says while Ace glared at Luffy before talking too. You see, you're not useless, we need you. If you weren't here Law and Corazon would have died. If you weren't here we would have never experienced things that we weren't able to until you came. Luffy's eye widened before grinning and crying in happiness. He took a look in his hands, the hands that were once filled with his nakama's blood. He came here not to let it happen again, not to give up midway. Speaking of which, you told us you can't sleep. Why sleep now? Sabo turned to the side, visibly sweating. Ah, Sabo told me to go sleep at least once since he said I was too pale and all. Luffy says while he and the two looks at Sabo. The two were glaring while the other one gave the, I'm so sorry, look. Sabo. That was enough to make Sabo run for his life and for Ace as well as Law to run and give Sabo a fist of love, child version, and maybe scalpel of death for Law's version. I'm not letting them do it. I'm not going to let it happen. I'm stopping this. Sabo is my own flesh and blood. It is the duty of every. Sabo's father was cut off by Luffy's punch and gave Sabo's father a glare. He was so late. He didn't know it could happen, but he'll put it aside for now. Bullshit. Luffy says with a dangerous glint in his eyes. Ace, Law, Corazon, and Sabo were surprised. Ace and Sabo was more shocked. Luffy has never succeeded to punch a person, ever. Sabo's father slowly stood up with a horrified expression as he touched his punched face. How dare you, I'm a knob. Luffy cut him off with dangerous eyes. Bullshit. Luffy says again with a more dangerous glint in his eyes. Outlook 3, Sabo's father, was enraged. Pirates. Kill this filthy piece of trash, Outlook 3 says while all of the Blue Gem pirates rushed towards Luffy. Ace and Sabo had a horrified face as Corazon and Law halfly felt pity, but they were still war. Luffy punches the Blue Gem pirates in one punch. Go. Okay, never mind. Ace and Sabo's jaw dropped. They never saw Luffy this strong. I mean, is this Luffy? The Luffy they knew was so carefree and so innocent, not like this Luffy in front of them. This Luffy has the tongue of a demon. This Luffy had dangerous eyes. And mostly, this Luffy knew how to fight. Outlook 3 was scared. Outlook 3 fell on his knees, shaking. Huh? Nobles are all talk and no bite. How dare you go against an N noble? I'll have YUK kill. Outlook 3 was cut off again. Bullshit, asshole. Piss off bastard and don't show your filthy face ever again. Make people search for us and I'll kill you, personally. Got that? Luffy says dangerously while everyone felt the tension in the place. It showed Luffy's bloodlust with his eyes glowing dangerously. This wasn't the Luffy they knew. Law and Corazon already knew it as they felt the place getting colder. Outlook 3 was pale, but he held on his stubborn pride. Do you know W here? Luffy glared harsher. This time he can feel himself on the verge of losing consciousness and possibly, he can see of how things would happen. He'd die. He'd die right now if he continues this. Got it? Now, do it or die? Luffy says with a cold tone. This wasn't the first time he killed someone after all. The time he snapped, the time where the Marines attacked his homeland, the time where his nakama died, the time where people who were close to him died, he snapped. Ever since that day, even Smoker didn't talk about his recent behavior of killing Marines who got too close on him. especially the graves of his loved ones and the places of his loved ones too. Fujitora didn't complain either. He knew why he would snap. The world was cruel, and the Marines did something too cruel. Koby didn't complain either. Sengoku, Fujitora, and Smoker were one of the only few people out there who could go close to Luffy without dying or getting attacked. Sengoku didn't either. Despite being a Marine, he knew why Luffy would be glad he was able to be friends even for a little to Luffy before he snapped and killed Luz in an instant. Either when Marines are on the island he is currently staying, he'd kill them if they made a move, or either he sees them. Marines disgusted Luffy, except for the few people who was kind Marines out there. I won't, please. Let me live, Outlook 3 says pleadingly, which surprised Sabo more. Fine, now go away before I get rid of you instead. Luffy says harshly before Outlook 3 ran away in fear. Let's go, before they wake up. Luffy said with a blank tone and expression. It scared the four of how Luffy reacted that much to what happened. It made them shiver and wanted to crawl on a hole and hide forever. Law and Corazon were surprised too. They never saw Luffy like this. Sure, he was strong, but he was too kind for this. This wasn't the Luffy they knew. So, can you tell us what happened there? Sabo asks awkwardly. He was somehow afraid of Luffy, and a part of him wants to run away. Yeah, you didn't act like you normally did. Law says as there were a few sweats on his face. It made him quite scared of Luffy at how he acted. How were you able to punch? Were you acting all this time? Ace says, feeling a lot same as his brothers were. Corazon was looking out in the window. This scene looked too much dark. It's almost as if there's no more color than white and black. Luffy sighed. He knew this was going to happen. He can lie to them, but not too long. Luffy acted as if he was confused. What did you mean? I saw you and Sabo getting hurt, so I acted on my instincts. Did I do something wrong? Luffy asks innocently. All of them looked at him for a minute before Ace and Sabo to sigh in relief, thinking it was really Luffy's instincts. On the other hand, Law and Corazon didn't take the excuse. Instead, they shut their mouth. If Luffy didn't want to talk about it, then they won't talk about it. You scared us for a minute there. You acted so differently, Sabo says as he sighed once again in relief. Ace bonked Luffy in the head. Gah! What was that for? Luffy says as he acted hurt. He can't show he wasn't after all those things, to show that he was indeed using his instincts. For worrying us, you idiot! Ace yells before sighing and slumping on Sabo's back. It's been a long day, you kids should sleep. Corazon says as he sleeps on the wall. After a while, everyone was sleeping soundly, except for Luffy, who was drinking coffee. This is bad, I'd better watch out on snapping. I almost wanted to kill that guy the moment I saw him hurting my brothers. I need to watch out on my temper. Luffy says darkly as he sips of coffee before smiling at the weather. The night's beautiful today. Oh look, it's Baratie, Luffy says, jumping up and down from excitement. Law and Corazon could only shake their heads and smile a little from Luffy's antics. Luffy didn't want to be seen as a kid, so he inflated himself to turn into a guy, like he was in the first time skip. Luffy goes to his room as he picks his older clothes. Baratie. Luffy stretches his arms and flies at Baratie, leaving Law and Corazon to get surprised and shout his name like Luffy was about to die. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Hello? Anyone here? Luffy asks after barging into the Baratie. Gah! What was that for, old fart? A little one's voice was heard. He took a peek and saw a little Sanji and old man Zeph. That's for peeling the apple wrong, you ingrate. Zeph says while Luffy sees Zeph kicking Sanji's head, which resulted in Sanji's head falling in the ground along with his body. Luffy laughed and made the cooks, Sanji and old man Zeph's attention to him. Luffy shuts his mouth after everyone looking at him. Hello, Luffy says awkwardly. There was an awkward silence before old man Zeph goes to him and kicks him. Sure, it didn't hurt Luffy, but he wanted to break his act, so, grudgingly, Luffy added his being hurt sound effect and made himself fall to the ground. Slowly he acts like he was hurt. What was that for, old man? O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Zeph narrows his eyes when he kicked the kid, at his point of view. But this kid is practically in his 19-years-old form. His legs started to hurt, especially when it looked late when he fell on the ground. That's for coming here without permission, brat, Zeph says while he sees the little kid frowning before the little kid started laughing. He looked at his back and saw the cooks and the lil eggplant looking at the kid as if he was crazy. Now that he turned to the kid did look like a crazy kid. The lil eggplant comes to the kid, looking for some bruises and maybe some skull cracks. Oi old fart, you must have kicked him hard to make him crazy, little Sanji says while Zeph glares at Sanji. I didn't, and show some respect you lil eggplant, Zeph says as he notices the kid stop laughing and turns into him, the brat grinning at him, and it looked impossibly wide, and it seriously looked like it can rival the sun's light. She, sorry, it's just that the hat is Sue, the brat says as he throws his hands on the air like he was seeing a bomb while him crazily grinning. Big, Zeph looks at him before hitting him in the head again. The lil eggplant sighs and goes back to the kitchen. Nay, can me and my friends eat here? The kid asks while grinning. Zeph sighs. He feels like something bad is gonna happen. Fine brat, just don't cause. Zeph couldn't even finish what he was saying as the brat already ran and ordered things after he was able to find a table with 3 chairs. He felt a headache coming. Zeph sighed and came to the kitchen. The cooks were utterly shocked, terrified and happy at the same time. After that Luffy found his friends and some scoldings and death threats came, which came only from Law while the cook's sweat dropped, as Luffy only laughed it off. The cooks were surprised how a petite kid can eat over thousands of foods. The kid even ordered rum, which was stopped by Law and Corazon telling him not to. Luffy pouted. I did it unconsciously anyway. Luffy says in his thoughts while he ate meat without rum, he was starting to miss it anyways. I mean, booze is a man's first love. How dare they do this to me? Luffy comically had a scary aura about him mixed with jealousy and some sulking there and that. The cooks, Law and Corazon's sweat dropped. Luffy stop sulking. Besides, it's bad for a kid's health. If you wondered how it tastes, wait when you become older. Law says as he obviously misunderstood it and made Luffy have a more scary aura. I'm older than the 2 of you, Luffy yells in his thoughts while he sulked as he ate meat, which was also his first love. The cooks were confused about what Law said by kid's health, but they shrugged it off. Luffy looks at pirates who barged in. None of the cooks cared, meaning it must be low-bountied pirates or pirates who just started off. Hey, you're cooks, right? Bring us food and rum. The pirates shouted while Luffy facepalmed. Forget about those pirates starting off. They're basically low-bountied pirates. A man can wait, that's Patty, right? Welcome shitty pirates. Do you have money to pay? Patty unknowingly insulted his customers, so the customers got angry. One brought out a gun and was about to shoot. Luffy cringed and grimaced. He didn't like seeing one getting hurt, especially if it's his friend's friend. If it's his friend's friend, then they're his friends. Luffy came in front of Patty and caught the bullet like a slow fly. Why not try to be nice? Luffy says slowly and dangerously, making it look like it was question, but it was clear it was a statement telling, don't mess with me. The others stepped back, which was a great idea. But some was just too stubborn, like their captain. You want to die, kid? The pirate captain shouts as he uses his sword as a threat. The cooks looked worried. Zeph glanced at the kids' friends. They were casually eating, but the older man was looking while drinking. He frowned. Weren't they supposed to get worried and panic now? Luffy had his eyes covered by the rim of his hat. The captain makes a smug face, clearly thinking that he won. Little did he know that it made one of Luffy's switch flick. Maybe. Luffy just says as he showed an emotionless face as he grabbed the man's neck. He wouldn't want to damage the Baratie. The others quickly raised their weapons but was stopped by Luffy's glare. Luffy slowly walked towards the exit as the others looked dumbfounded. He threw the choking captain in the water as he looked at the pirates' crew members. Go away. Luffy said he used a little conqueror's haki, which the others didn't felt as Luffy concentrated everything on the captain's nakama. They all nodded and quickly ran away. After that, he enjoyed the food that he was eating and the others looking at him weirdly. More meat. Luffy says as the others rushed to get more. Sanji came and had a meat in the tray. Luffy grinned at him. Hey, Luffy says as Sanji looks at him. What is it? Sanji asks. He had a hint of annoyance. When I set sail someday, would you like to join my crew? Luffy says, which surprised the 3 in the surrounding. No, I have a debt to pay in the old fart. Sanji shouts while Luffy only laughs as ruffles and petting Sanji's hair as Sanji was still a kid here. Which he got as a habit when he always plays with some children or young people when they aren't afraid of him, which made Luffy a little bit happy considering he lost everything except Sabo. The said kid got annoyed and pushed Luffy's hand. What are you doing? Luffy laughs again. Ruffling and patting your hair. She, you're still a kid so you should enjoy your life and follow your dreams. Luffy says while grinning. Sanji was shocked at the young man in front of him. Do you have a dream? Sanji asks slowly while Luffy looks at the window. She, yeah, Luffy responds as he looks at Sanji, who was looking at him straight in the eye. Can I know what it is? Sanji hesitantly asks while Luffy ruffles his hair again. I'm gonna be the Pirate King, Luffy yelled, which brought the attention all to Luffy's table. Sanji was amazed and happy at the same time. His dream was impossible, like him. Suddenly Luffy yawned and stood up. We gotta go. Hey kid. Luffy looks at him. See you a few years from now on. Just like that, Luffy and the others left. Of course, they also paid. Owari. Let's go to Gecko Island next. Luffy says as he was still in his old form. I should still be like this when I go to Gecko Island. Why are you still in that form? Law asks as he watches Luffy sit in the deck with a grin on his face. Secret. Luffy cass-eyed as he went back to helping Corazon do things. 10 years later. He finally left, Chief. We're going to miss him, Makino says as she stared at the sea, smiling. He'll ruin this town's reputation, Whoop Slap says while he huffs. The fisherman laughed at his memories with Luffy. I never thought he would be so serious about it, a fisherman says as Luffy was seen in the distance. As Luffy was in his boat he saw the sky. Ah. The weather sure is nice today, unlike Grand Line and New World. Luffy says quietly. Suddenly the Lord of the Coast came. Luffy smirked. I've been waiting for you. Luffy used a little amount of Conqueror's Haki to the sea monster and its sweats were continuously dropping. Luffy took out a rope. The sea monster got the message and used it to pull the boat. The people's jaw dropped when they saw it, causing Luffy to laugh. Luffy was really happy. He never thought his current body a long time ago would come when he becomes 17. He laughed to no end. His brother's jaw dropped, including Garp. When he turned 16 he was already 7 feet 8. Now he was 8 feet 0. He was probably taller than Sanji now. He might be tall as Doflamingo now. I mean, if he turned 17 in this current timeline, he was probably 72 today. He didn't know how it happened, but he won't forget the gobsmacked expression of his brothers. His former body also came back to him, which explains the scar coming back to him. It was a nice day, seagulls flying. A large whirlpool. Oops. Oh, I remember. Luffy puts his fist on his palm. I'm supposed to sleep in the barrel. He looked at the Sea Lord. Hey, why don't you follow the barrel and wait for me and stay away from the people seeing you? Oh. Pull the boat along with you too. The Sea Lord nodded carefully as he went inside the barrel as he slept. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Wait, if Alvida-sama finds out, you'll be killed. Luffy hears Koby shout while he's in the barrel. Koby, it's nice to see you again. I'll make sure you'll become a marine again. Luffy says in his thoughts while he silently laughs. It'll be fine if you keep your mouth shut, right Koby? Luffy hears outside the barrel. He was impatiently waiting for his time to knock some of them out. He felt that he was being moved or somewhat rotated. Yeah, that's true, Koby says as Koby was fearing for the worst. It's pretty heavy, one says. He can hear the guy say and he can already see them grinning outside. Can't wait, he hears a person say with knuckles cracking outside. Luffy's sweat drops. Who would punch a barrel filled with rum? That's wasting rum. Don't be greedy. I'm going to smash it right now, another guy says as Luffy grins. Now, Luffy says in his thoughts as he jumps out of the barrel. The one who was supposed to smash the barrel open got punched right in the jaw. Aw, what a great nap. Luffy looks at Koby who was frightened. He smiled nostalgically. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Koby was shocked. Someone came out of the barrel. It was a man. He had a straw hat and a long-sleeved red cardigan, with a yellow sash tied around his waist. But what scared Koby most about the guy was his X mark on the chest. Especially he was tall and so muscular. The guy walked towards him. Of course, Koby panicked as he had wobbling legs. Hey, do you have any food? The guy says and smiled at him. Slowly he nodded and the guy grinned at him. Suddenly the pirate with a tattoo on his left eye placed a sword on the guy. You bastard, stop screwing around. Don't you know we're pirates? A pirate says threateningly. The guy sighed and his eyes were covered by his hat. Get lost, jerks. Luffy uses his Conqueror's Haki. He was pissed, ruining my talk with Koby, jerks. Luffy says in his thoughts as he used enough to make them unconscious, each of them except Koby, who was staring at him dumbfounded. So, food. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Koby was shocked of how he can eat so much and drink rum too. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. What's your name? Luffy says cheerfully while Koby whimpers in fear. I'm C. Koby. Koby says while Luffy smiled. After that, there was an uncomfortable silence, except Luffy happily enjoying his drinks and foods. You're not a pirate, right Koby? Luffy says while Koby looks at Luffy who was eating. He nodded. What happened? Luffy asked even though he already knew. That day, I was only fishing, but I accidentally walked onto this ship. And I had to become a caretaker of the ship these 2 years to stay alive. Koby says nervously. Luffy can't help but say it.
You're pretty stupid and useless, and you seem kinda wimpy too, Luffy says as he laughs. It was actually to let him see what's the weaknesses he had, so he had no choice. I don't like you. Koby laughed and cried comically.
But you're right, if only I'm brave enough, Koby quietly says as he sighs. Hey, Luffy-san, why are you sailing? Luffy grinned at Koby. I'm going to be the Pirate King, even though I already am, the Pirate King. Luffy says while Koby got gobsmacked and his jaw dropped.
Wah, what? Pirate King, was the title of someone who has had everything in this world. Koby yells as he goes closer to Luffy, are you telling me that you're looking for the world's greatest treasure? The One Piece. Luffy nodded. Koby couldn't believe it. Impossible, 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 impo.
Bonk. Luffy sighed at Koby's current state. Ow, why'd you hit me? Koby says as he nurses the big bump in his head while Luffy huffed. I'm being insulted by a kid who's going to be a fleet admiral, HMPH. Well, can't blame him though, she. Luffy says in his thoughts while Koby nurses his big bump. Oh well, I'm used to it anyway, ahahaha, Koby says while Luffy holds his hat and covered his eyes by the rim of his straw hat.
I'm not afraid of dying at all. Because it's my dream. And I don't mind dying for it. Luffy says as Koby had his mouth agape.
Such amazing resolution, won't even mind death. Koby says in his thoughts, amazed. Will I be able to become a marine? Koby suddenly shouted and because of that, Luffy grinned. This is the real Koby. Luffy says in his thoughts, yeah, if you put your work hard, of course, you could. Koby stood up, filled with determination. Luffy-san. I know we'll be enemies, but joining the Marines and catch bad guys like Alvida-san no Alvida has always been my dream, Koby says with determination as Luffy grins. The top floor was suddenly broken by Alvida's mace. Who were you going to arrest, huh Koby? Alvida says as the current fat Alvida placed his mace on her shoulder. He doesn't seem to be Roronoa Zoro. Oh well, before you die, who's the most beautiful person in the sea, Koby? Koby rubbed his head, back to his cowardice side. Luffy sighed. Oh of course it's. Koby stops and looks at Luffy, who was waiting for his answer. It's not you, you're the rudest, damned bitch. All of them paled. Alvida got angry. Nice answer, Koby. Open your eyes, if you're going to be a marine, you have to at least see this. Luffy says while Koby opened his eyes, whimpering. You little brat. Alvida shouts her battle cry as she swings her mace. Luffy didn't use his devil fruit and also Haki. He'd be starving before he does it. Luffy was strong enough to punch her in the gut and send her flying. The others' jaw dropped. Luffy turned to the others. Prepare a boat for Koby, he's going to be a marine, Luffy yells with an authoritative voice as the others were too afraid so they nodded and quickly prepared a boat. Luffy-san. Koby couldn't say anything as he was crying in joy. We're finally at the Marines base. Luffy says as he throws his fists in the air to show his excitement, not even bothering about the strange looks the people gave to them. Yep, finally, Koby says while excitement in his tone but had a little bit of nervousness. You're great, Koby, Luffy says as he praises the very confused Koby. Huh? Koby says while Luffy laughs at Koby's face. We've actually reached our destination, Luffy says while he ruffles Koby's hair. Koby rubbed his head sheepishly in embarrassment. No, you did almost everything, Koby says while Luffy laughs and walks, grinning. Let's go eat. I need rum, meat, and my coffee, Luffy says in his thoughts as he unconsciously went to the same restaurant as before. The people were shocked as the people were in Baratie. The only difference is Luffy was able to drink his precious rums. After Luffy finished his foods and drinks. But never a no to rum and meat. We'll go our separate ways here. You do your best to be a great marine, alright? Luffy says as he drinks another bottle of rum. I will. Thank you so much, Luffy-san, you have to become a great pirate too, Koby says as he cries in happiness. Luffy laughs and drinks another bottle of rum. Although we'll be enemies on the future, Koby added as he wiped his tears. Say, I wonder if Zoro is still being kept at the marine base? Luffy asks to no one even though he knew already. Suddenly all the people went back to them in fear. Luffy laughs while he turns to eat his precious meats as Koby's sweat dropped. Looks like we can't just yell out the name, Zoro, Koby whispers to Luffy who just shrugged and he drinks rum. He ate the last meat after all. I just saw a notice on the streets, there's someone called Lieutenant Morgan at the base. Koby says happily resulting the people backed away in fear again. Of course, Luffy laughed until they left. Hey Koby, do you think I'm bad? Luffy suddenly asks a surprised Koby at the question. No, you're not bad, Koby instantly says while Luffy stops and looks at him in the eye. It made Koby shudder, it's as if Luffy was looking at his soul. Here's a warning for you. Luffy says with a serious expression that made Koby gulp. I'm not kind and I'm definitely an inhumane person when the time comes. Luffy says while Koby widens his eyes. You're not like that. You just saved me, Koby says while he looks at Luffy with disbelieving eyes. Luffy's definitely not a bad pirate. The world isn't black and white, it'd be too easy. There are some few kind pirates there, there's also bad marines. Keep that in mind before we go inside the base. Luffy says while Koby was shocked as he turned and already saw the base. Koby nods while Luffy turned to his happy-go-lucky mode. It's better to let him know before he sees it. Luffy thought as he looked over the wall. Oh, there's Zoro, Luffy says while grinning. Koby looks at him in disbelief. No way. Koby climbed the wall only to fall back in surprise and fear. That black bandana and cloth around his waist, and that intimidating aura, it's Zoro. Luffy only looks at Zoro. Go away before I kill you. Zoro says intimidatingly. Luffy raises his eyebrow in amusement. Doesn't he remember me? Or did I grow too much? Luffy laughed silently at the joke he made in his mind. Of course, Koby says things about Zoro's rumors once again. How can you kill me if you're tied up like that? Luffy says in a playful tone behind the wall as Zoro growls in anger. Suddenly a girl, Shushu, Koby and goes to Zoro with an onigiri in hand. Do you want to die or something? Get lost. Zoro barks at the girl, who stayed stubborn. Oni-chan, I made some rice balls for you. You haven't eaten for a long time, right? The girl says without getting scared in Zoro's words. This is the first time I made rice balls. Zoro gets infuriated, the kid could die if they see her. I'm not hungry. Go away, Zoro shouts again as the girl gets sad at Zoro's words. But the girl says slowly while Zoro gets impatient, they could see her anytime now. I don't want it, leave me, I'll kill you if you don't go. Zoro shouts as someone joins the conversation. Luffy facepalms. He'd totally have forgotten about Helmeppo. Roronoa Zoro. Don't pick on little kids, or else I'll have to report to my father about it. Helmeppo says smugly, matching his smug face that he was wearing right now. He must be someone important in the marine. Thank goodness the girl is safe now, Koby says as Luffy eyed him carefully, certain that Koby didn't learn while he looked back at Zoro and Helmeppo. TCH, if it isn't the lieutenant's bastard son, Zoro mumbles, which wasn't too quiet. Bastard, don't get cocky. My dad is a marine lieutenant? Helmeppo says angrily. Luffy thought it was the perfect definition of Helmeppo's current state right now. Well, hello little girl. These rice balls look pretty tasty. Helmeppo takes a rice ball and proceeded to eat it despite the girl's yells of disapproval. The moment he ate it, it was Luffy's turn to make a smug face. Of course at Helmeppo's face, but turned into a scowl from his actions. Leg? Horrible. You're supposed to put salt in these things. The girl looked sad from what Helmeppo just said. But I thought they'll taste better if they're sweet, the girl says weakly as Helmeppo enrages and throw the foods down, proceeding and stomping on it. Luffy frowned. Even if it was bad, never say no to food. How could someone eat something like this? Damn it, Helmeppo shouts as the girl kneels in front of her now being stomped rice balls. Ah, stop it. He can't eat this anymore. The girl shouts in sadness as she sees her rice balls being stomped flatly. Luffy watches the whole thing with his calm face. He saw something crueler. That's so cruel. That girl worked so hard to make them, Koby says, his eyes widened in disbelief. Don't worry, the ants will eat them all up, hee. Helmeppo says, smiling cruelly while squishing the rice balls into the ground. That's so cruel, I tried really hard to make them, the girl says as she starts crying. Helmeppo sighs. Don't cry, it's no wonder why I hate little brats so much, Helmeppo says while looking down at the girl. He takes a poster in his suit. It's all your fault you know, didn't you see what was written here? Anyone who helps a prisoner will be charged with the same crime * Marine Lieutenant Morgan, Helmeppo says as he forcefully makes the girl look at him. You know how scary my dad can be, right? You wouldn't gotten the death penalty if you're a grown-up. Helmeppo stands up and looks at a random marine. Oi, throw this brat out. Helmeppo yells at a random marine, who is shocked at what Helmeppo said. Huh? The marine says in disbelief as if he heard it wrong. Helmeppo gets impatient and holds the marine's collar. I'm telling you to throw her out of here. Are you trying to disobey me? I'm telling my dad, Helmeppo shouts as the marine pales of hearing Helmeppo's words. Aye, sir, the marine says fearfully. The girl looked terrified as the marine comes closer. Roll yourself into a ball, it'll not hurt as much as it'll be. The marine whispers to the girl. The girl nods weakly as she rolls herself into a ball. The moment the girl was thrown, Luffy caught her easily and placed her down. Are you alright? Koby worriedly asks the girl as she was placed down by Luffy. Those bastards, Zoro shouts in anger. Luffy could hear it all across the wall. Luffy looks at Koby and the girl with a blank face. Go, I'll catch up later in the restaurant. Luffy says with a calm face. All that and the two nodded as they left. Luffy already knew where the restaurant was. When he looked over, Zoro was all alone. Now, my dear and brave swordsman, Luffy says after he jumped down the wall and walked towards Zoro, whose eyes just widened at the statement. Don't tell me, Zoro say familiar straw hat, yep, it's him alright. Zoro thought of how Luffy became so huge after those words in his head. Zoro had to look up, which annoyed him for looking so small. She, long time no see, Zoro. Luffy says happily as he sits down on the ground, knowing that Zoro would hate looking up to a person. Zoro sighs as he was able to look down again. I have to keep the promise me and that Helmeppo made, just another few. Luffy sighed as he cut off Zoro. That guy didn't seem the type to keep his promises. Think, as long as you're tied down, he can torture you for all he likes. That's the same as he can kill you when he wants. Luffy explains as Zoro's eye widens at the revelation Luffy just said. After a few silence of the staring challenge that Luffy and Zoro were doing, Zoro finally gave up. Fine, but you better give me a proof of those words. I don't want to be labeled as a person who doesn't keep their promises. Zoro says as Luffy laughed, which made Zoro confused. Speaking of promises, I told you to wait, didn't I? Luffy says slyly as Zoro's eye widened a little, before scowling at Luffy. The world just move when I move. Luffy laughed at Zoro's words. Does that include you sailing in the seas? Luffy says while Zoro scowls and looks away. Before standing up, Zoro moves a little. Hey, hold on, Zoro yells at Luffy, who gave Zoro a glance sideways. Can you pick it up for me? Luffy looks at the dirtied rice ball before grinning and taking it. Luffy looks at Zoro, who widened his mouth as Luffy throws it into his mouth. Zoro coughs as Luffy raises his eyebrows in amusement. Tell that little girl, the rice ball tastes very good. Thank you very much. Luffy laughs and nods before going to the restaurant back. Really? The girl named Rika yells in happiness from what Luffy said. Yep, he ate all of it. Luffy responds as Rika grins in satisfaction. I'm so happy, Rika says as Koby sighs and sat in a barrel in the other side. Is he really that horrible person his reputation says he is? Koby asks while Rika turns to him with an enraged face. No, he isn't. Oni-chan didn't do anything wrong. It's just that the people are afraid of him. He got arrested because of me. He killed Helmeppo's wolf. Because Helmeppo let his wolf run around and everyone got scared. Rika explains while Koby felt slightly guilty for believing rumors too much. Luffy sighs as he leans at the wall while drinking his coffee. So you're saying that Zoro only got arrested because he killed Helmeppo's wolf? Luffy says as he was casually drinking his coffee. Yep. Rika says as she nods while Koby fixes his glasses in his eyes. You're right, so maybe he has a bad temper, but chasing down fugitives isn't that big a crime either. Koby says as Helmeppo's laugh was heard in the background. All of them turned to see Helmeppo walking at the middle of the road, the others bowing at the side. He, who dares to raise his head? I'll tell my dad, Helmeppo says smugly while Luffy narrowed his eyes. He acts like that wobble, except the dad thing. Luffy thought as he says rainbow of curses for that guy, if he comes back to Drum Island. Luffy was going to make Wobble pay for it. Do you want to be like Roronoa, Zoro? I'm gonna publicly execute him in 3 days. Luffy stood up, getting enough information he needed. Now, Luffy says in his thoughts as he walks towards Helmeppo. At the first second Helmeppo was in Luffy's range. He punched Helmeppo, but not the strongest he can. It was payback for what he said. Unlike a long time ago, Helmeppo was unconscious. Luffy sighed, so weak, I didn't even try to punch him seriously. Luffy thought as he glared at the two Marines. Take this disappointing kid away from me in here. Luffy said as he thought that Helmeppo wasn't fit to be called as a man. The two Marines quickly nodded and took Helmeppo away. Then Luffy only noticed the terrified people. Luffy-san, you want to mess with the Marines or something? Koby shouts in fear as Luffy sighs at him. I'm a pirate, and I most likely hate people like him. Besides, the fact that I'm a pirate already means I messed with the world government the moment I turned into one. Luffy says harshly as he remembered Koby needs some mental training before training with his grandpa. Koby flinched at Luffy's tone before letting Luffy go to the Marine base once again. Koby soon felt angry at his words. Luffy-san's right. Luffy-san only said that to me so I can learn faster. I have to train and enlist in the Marines soon. Koby says in his mind with determination as he followed Luffy and the base. Captain. What made you come here? Dragging, that kid with you? Zoro says while Luffy grins at Zoro's words. Koby was being held at the back of his collar. Despite being held like that, he had a determined face which made Zoro sweat drop. That Helmeppo said he was about to publicly execute you in 3 days. You can ask Koby. Luffy says as Zoro looks at Koby who is nodding with a serious face on him. TCH, that bastard, Zoro mumbles before looking at Luffy, who finally placed down Koby. You used 3 katanas, right? Luffy asks even though he already knew it. Yeah, that bastard took it from me. Zoro says as Luffy grins and touches the rim of his hat before looking at Zoro with a grin in his face. Wait for me here, I'm giving you back those katanas. I have to punish some people for their ill treatment too, you know. Luffy says as he turned to go in the Marine base, cracking his neck and knuckles, of course with a serious face. The two found themselves pitying the Marines a little. And it only means one thing, and you guys already know about it. Okay, you're saying, we should follow the bird? A bird? Zoro asks in disbelief as Luffy laughs and nods. Zoro facepalmed, what kind of captain did I choose? Zoro thought as Luffy casually drinks his coffee. We're close, I'm going first. Luffy yells as he rockets himself before Zoro got the chance to react. Once Luffy was out of sight, Zoro cursed. That idiot, Zoro says as he paddled fast to catch up with his somehow idiotic captain. While Zoro was having a hard time, Luffy was having the time of his life. Oh wait, I saved Nami so she shouldn't be here. What on earth is she thinking? Luffy says to himself as he sensed Nami a long time ago. He sighs, that woman, getting herself into trouble. Luffy says in his thoughts as he Geppo ed towards Nami. Opopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopopop is in defeat, is this it? I haven't even found my captain, and now I already lost a battle. Her thoughts were cut off as she heard bones breaking. She slowly opened her eyes and got surprised. "Wyu," a random pirate says as his hands were being broken by a tall man. He managed to say as he was knocked unconscious. Nami widened her eyes as she saw a familiar straw hat on the tall man's head. Luffy. She yells in surprise as Luffy looked at her with a grin. "My, such a coincidence seeing you here, my dear navigator. Mind telling me why, oh why, are you being chased by these pirates here?" Luffy says with a grin. The pirates on the ground knock unconscious. "I thought you were waiting at Kokoyashi village." Luffy says as Nami gulped before smiling at her now maybe mad captain. "Well, I wanted to get the map of Grand Line. I thought we'd need it," Nami says as she looked at her captain, who walked towards her. She was visibly sweating when her captain crouched down to face her equally. She closed her eyes, thinking she'd be given a punishment. Luffy, surprising Nami, pats and ruffles Nami's hair while he hugs her as Nami opened her eyes and saw Luffy grinning. She, nice job Nami. But you should have waited for me. I can't let my navigator running around and getting hurt for our journey," Luffy says as he ruffled Nami's hair before helping Nami stand up. "I'm a thief who steals from other pirates. I've done this for years," Nami says proudly as Luffy laughs and lets go of Nami while ruffling her hair. "Correction, you're a pirate who steals from other pirates," Luffy says as Nami looks at him surprised. "You didn't tell me you were a pirate, but I guess that's okay," Nami says as Luffy grins at her and she grins back. "Well, I think there are some other things you need something here more than the map, right?" Luffy says slyly while Nami looks at him surprised before grinning devilishly. "You're right, Captain," Nami laughs evilly as Luffy just snickered, but at the same time it as evil as Nami's. "O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Who are we waiting to come again?" Nami asked her captain, who was grinning at her. The two was on the shore. "Our first mate or our swordsman?" Luffy says as Nami nods before looking at the sea. After a few minutes Nami felt bored. "Can't we wait for him later and get the treasure now?" Nami says as she sighed before looking at her captain who was laughing. Luffy turned to her and looked down at her. Nami, of course, felt so small. How is he so tall? Nami isn't even half of Luffy. Luffy had a blank face before raising his hands. Flick. Ouch. Nami yells in pain as Luffy flicked her head, playfully, in Luffy's turn. "What was that for?" Nami shouts in anger as Luffy laughs. "Crewmate first before treasure." Luffy shortly explains as he turns to the sea as Nami rubs her flicked forehead and turned back. After a while, Nami saw a boat. "Hey, is that it?" Nami says as she points and tugged her captain's vest to get Luffy's attention. "Him? Oh yeah, that's him," Luffy says while drinking his coffee casually as Nami's sweat dropped. "Where'd you get it?" Nami asks while Luffy laughs and finishes his coffee. "One of the houses," Luffy just says before looking back at the boat. "O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O for a while the boat finally reached land. Luffy was grinning when Zoro landed. "Yo!" Luffy says as Zoro punched Luffy's gut since he couldn't reach Luffy's head. "Don't, yo, me. And how the hell is the island close?" Zoro yells with a very funny angry face. After a few bickering and complaints from Zoro, the three poor pirates was finally acknowledged. "Who are they?" Luffy asks as Nami widened her eyes, as well as the pirates who looked at Nami. "You," the pirates shout as they raised their weapons to attack Nami. Unfortunately for them, Nami hid behind Luffy. "Don't attack my navigator, jerks," Luffy said as he laughs and grins while he was torturing the pirates. Zoro's sweat dropped before turning to Nami. "You're our navigator? Did he pick you out of nowhere?" Zoro cautiously asks. He wouldn't want traitorous people on his captain's crew. Nami shook her head at the second question. "Yeah, I am the navigator and he didn't pick me out of nowhere. How about you?" Nami says as she asked back. Strangely, Zoro shook his head. "Anyways, we've got a clown to beat," Luffy says as he was finally done torturing the pirates. The two just nodded and followed their captain. "O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O after a boring fight. Zoro getting an injury. Luffy decided to let Zoro have it though because they won't be able to meet some people on the journey. "A dog," Luffy says as he stares at the dog. "Yeah, a dog," Zoro dumbly says as he stared too. Nami, of course, stared as she was also curious. "What's a dog doing here?" Nami says as the two look dumbfounded. "Anyways, let's just go. Treasures are waiting for me," Nami says while she had belly eyes. The two sweat dropped. "Oi, you people, don't do anything to Shushu." An old man with clothes armor comes and yells at them. causing the three to look at him. Shushu, who are you, mister? Zoro asks as the man looks at them. I'm the village's leader, or in other words, the chief, the old man says proudly. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. How's Zoro? Luffy asks as he leaned in the wall while his arms crossed in his chest. I let him sleep at my house since it's just next door. Even though I told him that there's a doctor at the shelter, he won't listen and says that it'll get better by sleeping. Even though it's an enormous injury. The chief says as he huffs while Luffy laughs as Luffy slowly goes towards it. Shushu. The dog's name is Shushu, right? Luffy asks as he looks at the dog who was eating dog food. He's guarding this store, I just came to give him some food, the chief says as Nami places her hands on her hips. Ah, you're right. Now that I'm looking carefully, it's a store. I see it's pet food store. Nami says as the chief started saying Shushu's history. In the end, Nami started to have sympathy for the dog. Then, could it be that the dog's continuing, just waiting for his owner to return? That's what everyone says, but I see it in a different way. Since Shushu's an intelligent dog, he knows that his owner's already passed away. The chief says as Nami looked surprised. Then why still guard the store? Nami asks, wondering why the dog would still go that far. Obviously, this store is a treasure to Shushu. He loved his owner so much, and since this is the only property left by the owner, I think he'll continue to guard this store. It's an unendurable thing. I tried to take him into the shelter a few times, but he won't take a step away from this place. If I just left him here, I think he'd stay here until he starved to death. The chief says nostalgically as Nami and Luffy smiled. RRRRRROAAARRRR. WH, what is that roaring noise? Nami said as she jumps from her position. The chief didn't look better. TH, that is that guy. Gee, the chief said while taking a step back in fear before the chief and Nami ran away, leaving Shushu and Luffy alone. Well, I found one guy. I'm Buggy's pirate crew member, the beast trainer Moji. Moji, who had his hair shaped like a teddy bear. The big lion growled while Luffy, who was grinning and didn't even cared about it one bit. Ho ho ho, so the people you were with just ditched you. Poor thing. And you just helped a petty thief. Luffy's grin disappeared and the dark expression on him darkened one by one when Moji kept on talking. I have no reason not to kill you. Tell me where Roronoa Zoro is. Moji finally says as Luffy sighed deeply before looking at Moji. No, I don't sell my nakama. Luffy just says as he didn't even bother hearing what Moji said as the lion tried killing him. Luffy had no choice but to let the lion claw him since he can't risk Zoro getting hurt by the damage. It'd be best if he took most of it. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O before the house could be set on fire. Luffy punched Moji but to the point where Moji was barely conscious. Don't touch his treasure. Or it'll be me you're going to be facing. Luffy says as he growls much darker and more terrifying than the lion's. Heck, someone would think it's a dangerous animal if they didn't saw this. The lion rushed towards Luffy as Moji said, but the lion was quickly flown away by Luffy's punch. It'd be considered as a tap for Luffy. Richie, Moji says as he had tears on his face, with surprise on it. Now, Luffy says as his eyes were covered with the straw hat, going up while standing up before looking at Moji, who was sweating. You next. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O while Nami and Luffy had a light conversation after the one-sided fight. The chief snapped. I can't stand it anymore. Nami turns to look at the chief. What? Nami yells in surprise as the chief looks frustrated. It's just so miserable, so miserable. Shushu and you youngsters are fighting like this, but why is it that I, being the village chief, can only watch our village being trampled? The chief screams as Nami sweat drops. Wait, chief, calm down. Nami yells as she tries calming down the fired-up chief. To a real man, there are some fights that cannot be avoided. Isn't that right, kid? The chief yells and turns to Luffy, who casually said, That's right, which undoubtedly added more fuel to the fire. Don't encourage him, Nami yells to Luffy, who looked disinterested as hell. Then suddenly, the chief told the island's story, etc. But then, Buggy had to shoot his buggy ball and destroy the village on the spot. Suddenly, it hit him like a freaking train. Zoro! Luffy yells with a horrified tone. He calmed down after feeling Zoro's haki. Luffy sighed. We've really got a clown to beat. Luffy says as he sighs, it was going to be a long day. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Don't mess with me. The chief was cut off as he was knocked out from Luffy's neck chop. Next was Nami's voice after a few minutes of silence. Did you really had to do that? Nami asks her captain with worry hinted for the old man. Don't worry, I only knocked him out. I don't kill people. Luffy said as he pauses. I'll only kill if it's necessary. Luffy's voice was almost a whisper so only Nami and Zoro heard it. He slowly placed the chief down then turned to Buggy. Hey, you, huge, red, ugly, big nose. Luffy yells with his eyes and grin filled with mischief. Soon the area was deadly quiet. Then, Nami and Zoro looks at Luffy as if he was crazy and Buggy looked like he was about to explode. Fire the Buggy special cannonball. Fire. Buggy yells in anger as Zoro sighed and Nami ran away as fast as she can. Be gone, Buggy shouts as it was fired. Are you trying to get yourself killed, you idiot? Nami screams as Zoro went beside his captain. Good thing you told me about those Haki, Zoro says as he sighs once again. Luffy only laughed. Bring the cannonball back to them, Luffy says as Zoro nods before sheathing his katanas. As if on cue, Zoro parried the cannonball and brought it back to the pirates. BOOMMMMMM. The bar was blown to pieces as the cannonball went back to them. Luffy just whistled. This isn't humanly possible, Nami yelled at Luffy, who looked at her with his, "Are you serious?" look. Normal, and, world doesn't fit just right in, Nami, Luffy says as Nami had a surprised face before sighing then nodding. Ha ha ha, a familiar voice coming from the Bond house as the three turned their head to see an unconscious body in front. You're chatting around making a lot of noise, like you're not scared, Buggy says while Luffy looks at him with a blank face. Using their crew as shields, Nami says in surprise and hinted with disgust. Nami hated people like them. This is the biggest humiliation we've ever received under our pirate flag, Captain, a man with a long cloak and a scarf says, hiding in a familiar lion's body as protection from the cannonball. I'm so mad, words fail me, Buggy said as he threw down the two poor people on the ground. Luffy sighed, it'll take a lot before he fights Buggy. OPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPO, because it's taking too long. Acrobat technique, fire try, before the long-cloaked man, now known as Kabaji, could do his technique. Luffy pulled Zoro and used armament to cover them from the fire. Wah, Kabaji said as he was surprised. Zoro, use Haki and don't be careless. Also, Luffy said and turned to Kabaji to the last word. I hate people like you. It's spineless to use tricks in people. You should be ashamed. Kabaji flinched before glaring. Sorry I got careless, I won't be next time, Zoro said as he flinched when Luffy shred a part of his cloth to stop the bleeding temporarily. You really should, Luffy says before going out in the way of two fighters. I know you hate me doing this, but you should also know it's a disgrace for the other opponent if he fights a wounded man. Even though this certain man doesn't care though, Luffy thought as Kabaji ran towards Zoro. At the midst of the battle, Nami tugged Luffy's shirt. Hey, behind the destroyed pub there's a warehouse. Their treasure is in there, and the Grand Line map is probably still with Buggy, so, Nami says as she looks up to silently ask permission to Luffy, who grinned and nodded. Nami suddenly had belly eyes and rushed towards the warehouse. Luffy can't help but sweat drop. Acrobat technique, murder miss trick, Kabaji says as he made a cloud of dust, though it would be useless against Kenbunshoku Haki. As if on cue, Zoro surprised Kabaji as he used his katana. Oni, Jiri, Zoro shouts as he used his technique to finish off Kabaji, who got a direct hit. Damn it, the world's best pirates are the likes of a common thief. So shameful, Kabaji said as he was fully knocked out. Zoro looked at the fallen Kabaji. Not a common thief, Zoro says as he took his Haramaki down. But a pirate, Zoro says as he fell down. Luffy, I'm gonna sleep. Zoro looks at Luffy who nodded, after that he just slept. You mean you guys are pirates? Buggy shouts in mixed surprise and anger. Luffy looked at him. Yeah, you're gonna have to hand over the Grand Line map, Buggy, Luffy shouts back while exercising his arms and neck. He didn't want to say Grand Line, Paradise, because Buggy would react something clearly more different. So that was your goal. That place isn't exactly somewhere nameless pirates like yourself can go as they please. So what are you planning to do there? You want to go have a sightseeing tour? Buggy responds with a yell. Luffy looks at Buggy while grinning. I'm gonna become the Pirate King, Luffy says as he proceeded to punch some sense to Buggy, who separated himself but got punched anyway. WHYU, Buggy said as he readied knives. Bara bara, windmill, Buggy shouted as the knives flew towards Luffy, who dodges it by jumping in midair, moving here and there in the air. Buggy throws the knives still in midair. Is most likely impossible, Buggy shouts as Luffy sighs. Why not? Luffy says as went towards the side using Geppo a little, not wanting to reveal his powers yet. He was still grinning, playing with Buggy for a little bit. OPOPOPOPOPOPO, never knew he was so strong, Nami silently says as Luffy took Buggy's head and slammed it down after Buggy taking the bait and taking Luffy's arm. She watches as Luffy let go of Buggy's head and let it go back. Nami didn't quite get why Luffy did it, but she can't blame herself since Luffy was weird. Damn, separating into sections, nice fruit, Buggy, Luffy says while Nami looks at Luffy like he was crazy on the sidelines. Why would he compliment an opponent? She watched as some of the pretending pirates mutter some things before going back to pretending to be unconscious. OPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPO, Buggy growled as he felt being played by a certain damn straw hat. Bara bara cannon. Buggy shot his arms with the knives. Luffy took the arm and felt a bad feeling as he felt a sense déjà vu. Separate. Luffy suddenly widened his eyes as he fell down. How could I forget it? I may be the Pirate King in the former timeline and it's been a long time since someone targeted my straw hat, but for now, I'm not. Luffy thought as his eyes darkened. He didn't feel pain in the side of his head knowing he used Bushishoku Haki unconsciously, but it was his straw hat that made him feel the strong hurt in the heart. He wasn't a Pirate King yet. That thought made him overprotective of his straw hat. He growls and stand up, proceeded in taking his hat and looking at it carefully. You bastard! Luffy shouted as he growls, taking out a lot of Conqueror's Haki than he intended, but not to the fullest. In fact, it wasn't even close. OPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOPOP unconscious as Luffy shouts and growls. "What the?" Nami silently says to herself as she falls down, panting badly. She looked at the pirates who pretended. They were undoubtedly unconscious now. She looked at Buggy. He looks like he's feeling the same. She looks at Luffy, who is still growling and had a dark expression on his face. She looks at Luffy questioningly. Why isn't he affected? Nami thought. What? So, you're pissed because of a straw hat? Nami hears Buggy say as she also sees Buggy not trying to pant badly, most likely holding some in. Shut up. Luffy was immediately at Buggy's front and punched Buggy. Buggy went flying to the sky at the moment he got punched. I took out more than I intended to. Nami and Zoro's here. I should have been more careful. Luffy whispers to himself as he brushes the dirt off his vest and pants. Luffy nudges Zoro. Oi Zoro. Get up. Let's go. Luffy says as Zoro slowly wakes up. Did you finish the fight? Zoro asks as he sees no pirates conscious left. He was also wondering about the deadly Haki he felt, but he knew the only one that could use Haki in East Blue was him and Luffy, so he just thinks that it's Luffy's. Yeah, our navigator got the treasures and the Park Grand Line map. Luffy says as he tries shutting up since he almost said, paradise. Ah, I don't think I can walk yet, Zoro says as he puts a hand on his head. Anyways, the villagers are on their way. If they saw us with the unconscious chief, they'd think we did it for sure. Luffy says as he picks up Zoro like a bride. Zoro's look was too priceless. Nami laughed so much in the background. Why? Put me down, you idiot. This is a disgrace for a swordsman, Zoro says with a deep red blush. Luffy laughed so hard. I can't, or do you want me to put you down like a sack in my shoulder, or let me just drag you by your arm? Luffy says as he smirks. Zoro gains a tick mark and attempted to use his katana to kill Luffy, but failed. I'd rather be dragged, Zoro shouts as Luffy laughed before dragging Zoro by Zoro's arm. Nami, let me get the 2 bags for you. Luffy says as Nami nods and let Luffy take the 2 in one hand. Nami, can we leave the other bag for the town? Luffy asks at Nami, who sighed but nodded. Luffy grins. You're a nice person, aren't you, Nami? Luffy says as he laughs while Nami rubbed her head sheepishly. Ah, the money's only for our crew anyway, Nami says as she blushes at the compliment. Ah, I forgot. Nami, leave your boat. I have a better boat for us. Luffy says as Nami looks at Luffy weirdly, but nods. Get used to it until we reach Gecko Island, though it'll only be 2 islands left, Luffy almost whispered as he said it. Nami looked at him weirdly. Huh? What do you mean? Nami asks, almost feeling uneasy. Luffy points at their boat. It had a sea king. Oh, that's Norm what? A sea king. It wasn't long before Nami's scream echoed through the whole island. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Trust me, if you think this is a dream, I repeat, it is not a dream, Nami. Zoro says seriously to Nami, who was nodding to Zoro's words before sighing. As much as I didn't want to believe it was real, Nami says as she looks at Luffy, who was petting the Sea King like it was some kind of adorable puppy, and the Sea King was purring too. She sighs again. So, where do we go next? Nami asks Luffy, as Luffy stopped and looked at Nami. Gecko Island, you'll meet our sniper. Luffy says slowly as he turns to pet the Sea King once again. Zoro and Nami looked at Luffy weirdly. Say, you've been acting like you've sailed before. How old are you, exactly? Last time I saw you, you looked like 19 years old, Zoro asks as Nami nodded in agreement. I've been wondering too, Nami asked, felt like she quoted it though. Luffy looks at them weirdly before laughing. Maybe I've sailed, maybe I haven't. I'm not answering that second question, maybe I'll say it someday. Luffy says before stopping petting the Sea King. Speaking of which, I think I can say it considering I've told Grandpa I came from the future. Well, that time it was an accident. Hope he can keep it well though, Luffy thought before continuing to pet the Sea King. Putting that aside, I'm hungry, Luffy says as he stops and looks at the Sea King, thinking of meat, which he brushed off since the Sea King was his friend. Luffy stands up and takes 5 meat inside a barrel. He can't let the food storage go out easily or he'll die out of starvation. You're so secretive, we're a crew, aren't we? Nami says as she crosses her arms and pouts. Well, maybe someday I'll tell it, and correction Nami. Luffy turns to look at Nami and Zoro while he grins at them. Family, not a crew. The two looked surprised before grinning. We need to plan things more, Nami says as Luffy stops petting the Sea King for once and look at her. What do you mean? Luffy asks as confusion was all over his face. Are we going to the Grand Line? Like this? Nami emphasizes, this, as she looks at Luffy, who was confused at first before laughing. She, foods, ship, or even members aren't a problem. We'll get a ship and our sniper at the next island. We'll just think of the enemies we get later on. Luffy said as he plopped down the side of the boat. I also need some reports to know and say to Giant Asen too. Luffy thought as he takes off his hat and looks for it for a second before putting it back. Okay, Nami says awkwardly and was frozen stiff as she sees her captain grinning mischievously. We also have to train, since Grand Line is very dangerous for beginners, Luffy says as he stands up. Time for Haki training. By this, Zoro stands up as he yawns. Finally, I've been waiting for this, Zoro says. The two looked like they were understanding each other. Can't say the same for Nami though. Wait, Haki? What's Haki? Nami says as she looks at her captain and Zoro back and forth. Luffy laughs at Nami, which caused Nami to look at Luffy. Haki is a mysterious power that is found in every living being in the world. It is not that different from the typical senses, however, most people don't notice it or fail to awaken it. Broadly speaking, there are 2 types of Haki available to everyone, given the proper training. However, there is a 3rd type that only a certain group of chosen ones are said to possess. Luffy pauses as he looks at Nami seriously. Haki is separated into 3 categories, or colors: Kenbunshoku Haki, which grants users a 6th sense of the world around them and limited precognitive abilities. Busashoku Haki, which allows the user to use their spirit as armor to defend against attacks or to make their own attacks more potent. And Haoshoku Haki, a rare type of Haki only 1 in a million can use, which grants the user the ability to overpower the will of others. And I'm going to sharpen your colors. Nami stands up as she was ready to participate. The two didn't notice the mischievous grin from their merciless captain. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Hoo-hoo. It's such a beautiful day. A slim tan-skinned teenager with medium-length black woolly hair, prominent lips, and a long nose said as he stares at the sea on a cliff. There's nothing like starting such a happy and refreshing day by looking at the sea, the long nose says as the birds chirp at the background. See you next time, Usopp. The long nose, now known as Usopp, suddenly remembers a certain Straw Hat Man. Why him? Usopp asks himself before shrugging it off and goes to a quiet village. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. This is bad, Usopp shouts as he runs to a quiet village. We're in danger. The pirates are attacking. He shouts louder than the first. He repeated saying, the pirates are coming, then shouting warnings to the people. What, pirates? An old man shouts in surprise as he hears the shoutings of Usopp. Oh, Usopp is starting to shout again. That means I have to go to work now, an old man says as he casually drinks as he hears, the pirates are coming, outside. Not again, a man says as he looks at a newspaper. Still, he was grinning. I was just joking, wahahahaha, Usopp says as he bursts into laughter, not long before someone throws a frying pan into Usopp's head. Why you little liar, I won't let you get away this time, an old man says as he had a broom in his hands as a weapon. Usopp looks as everyone goes out of their houses and started chasing him with some kind of weapons on their hands. Stop right there, you bastard, the people, though mostly old men, shouted as they chase Usopp, who was running for his dear life. Wahahaha, they're chasing me, Usopp says the obvious as he had tears coming out of his eyes, though he was grinning. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Ah, land. I miss this feeling already. Luffy says as he sits in the sand, grinning madly. On the other hand, Nami and Zoro were plopped on the sand. They had bruises, cuts, and injuries everywhere. Unlike Luffy who had no bruises or injuries. You held back, Zoro says angrily as he was on his knees. Despite what he said, he was angry at himself for being weak and not being able to be strong enough. Nami felt the same thing. Grand Line is tougher than our training. If you can't handle that much then you won't survive in Grand Line, Luffy says as he was patting his shorts to take off the dirt. The two was quiet as they kept repeating Luffy's word in their heads, encouraging themselves. It was quiet until a shout of a person came. Luffy! A person shouts as they turned to see who shouted it and saw a long-nosed person and 3 kids at the cliff. His jaws were dropped and his eyes looked like it was ready to fall out of their sockets. The person took a step forward which caused him to fall off the cliff. Nami and Zoro sweat dropped. You know him, Luffy? Zoro asks as he turns to Luffy, who nodded. A few seconds the long-nosed person was up and ran towards Luffy like a madman. Luffy was grinning so Nami and Zoro thought the long nose wasn't a threat. It's been a long time, you've grown so much I can't even reach you anymore. Not like I could even a long time ago. And you've got a crew already. The long nose shouts in excitement. Luffy grins at the long nose. Alright, calm down, Usopp. How about we go do Meshi first, eat then introduce to each other? Nami and Zoro might be confused right now. Luffy says as he looks at Nami and Zoro, who had confusion all over their faces. Yosh, let's eat. Luffy added as he pumped his fists in the air. The kids, and the three sweat dropped. You only want to eat, they all thought at the same time. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O, Usopp. Meet Nami? Luffy gestures over Nami with a bottle of sake that he was drinking, which annoyed Nami. And Zoro? Luffy does the same to Zoro, who was also drinking a sake. Nami is our treasurer and navigator while Zoro is our swordsman. Luffy ended as Usopp greeted them, which Nami and Zoro did the same. I am your captain. Call me Captain Usopp. Usopp chokes as Luffy suddenly put Usopp in a headlock, trapping and choking Usopp. Luffy was grinning while he was tightening his headlock on Usopp, playfully. Oh, who gave you the permission to be the captain, Usopp? Why you, little rascal? Luffy said as he was headlocking Usopp despite the limited space they had. Usopp was slowly turning into blue as he tried breaking free from Luffy's headlock. Going, why? Usopp managed to say as Luffy stopped his actions when he understood what Usopp said, after a few minutes of Usopp coughing and slowly turning back to his normal skin color. Usopp had a comical angry expression on him. Were you trying to kill me? Usopp says as Luffy laughs. The other sweat dropped at the scene. What's the going merry? Nami asks, looking at her captain for information because she has no absolute idea who or what is going merry. Ah, going merry is our ship, Luffy says gleefully. The others didn't notice sad expression for a second. Going merry is upgraded now, Usopp says as Luffy raised an eyebrow in surprise. Upgraded? I wonder how they upgraded it. Luffy thought as Usopp seemed proud. Going merry has its own captain room now. The Going merry is also slightly bigger now and the ship itself is stronger and tougher. That might be the only thing we were able to do because East Blue is weakest of the 4 blues and we lack great kinds of stuff, unlike the other blues. Usopp says he looked at the others. I didn't know you were the Luffy, Captain Usopp said for a long time. A boy with dark green hair shaped like a pepper, now known as Piemon, says as he looks at Luffy. Really? Luffy asks as he looks at Usopp, who tried shutting Piemon's mouth off, to no avail and he blushes. Luffy and the other laughs. I see Usopp admires our captain. Nams at Usopp's face. After a few minutes of teasing Usopp, Usopp goes to the corner and sulk. The others watch it as they laugh. Why don't we see Kaya now? It's been a long time since I met her. Luffy says which made everyone turns to face Luffy, including Usopp. Luffy grinned as he looks at Usopp, who nodded as if they had a silent conversation. Let's go meet Kaya, Usopp says as he grinned and stood up and led the way to Kaya's mansion. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Ah, it's been a long time, Luffy-san. Come in, Kaya says as she opens the door. Kaya is a slim and pale-skinned girl with blonde hair. She has wide brown eyes that are of a sort of lighter shade. The others bowed and went it, considering it was a rich girl's mansion. It's been a long time, Kaya, she, Luffy says as he laughed. Kaya snickered slightly as they sat. Usopp noticed that Nami and Zoro didn't have the chance to introduce themselves. This is Nami and Zoro, they're Luffy's nakama, Usopp says as he gestured over Nami and Zoro. Kaya greeted them as Nami and Zoro did the same. This is my butler, Mary. Kaya said as Mary bowed to them. After that it was an uncomfortable silence. I need to call Giant Asen soon, Luffy said as he was quiet, which was rare. The others noticed it when Luffy had a frown on his face. Suddenly Kaya stood up, which stopped Luffy thinking about the problems later on, and he was beginning to be red anyway. I guess you want to see Going Merry now, right? It's been upgraded. Usopp-san must have told you. Kaya says as Luffy nods. Luffy stands up as everyone followed. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. Nami and Zoro stared in awe as they see Going Merry. The Going Merry has a jib and a central steer rudder. The ship's armaments consisted of 4 cannons, 1 in the bow pointing forward, 1 in the stern, and 2 pointing to either side. A caravel, Nami says in delight as Mary coughed to get their attention. Now, I will explain the steering system. Mary says as he comes to Luffy. Luffy gestured to stop for a minute. Nami, come and listen with me. There might be times where I leave and you guys will be alone. Luffy says as Nami looked at him weirdly before nodding, then listening to Mary as he gives the instructions. O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O-P-O. After an hour of Mary explaining, it finally stopped. Luffy placed his items on the captain's room. He was quite amused of the shocked and terrified faces of Kaya, Mary, Usopp and the kids when the Sea King went out of the water. Soon after that, they left and so the Sea King, Luffy freed the Sea King. Usopp joined and they also placed their items in their respective rooms, which are the female and male's room. Luffy sighed and plopped himself at the chair. The transponder snailed close to him. He dials a familiar number. He waits until someone finally answered. Hello? This is Marco the Phoenix. What do you want? Marco's voice was the cold, firm and authoritative kind of voice. Luffy decided to speak up. She, it's Luffy. I gotta talk to Giant Asen. Luffy says cheerily as the transponder snail's eyes widened. It was going to be an important conversation after all. Luffy, alright, this has to be some important thing. You wouldn't call us for no reason, especially if your brother is here yoi. Marco says with a deadpan tone. Luffy laughs as he hears the deadpan tone at the end. Damn right I won't, it'd blow my secret, she. Luffy says as he hears Marco sigh while he laughs again. Wait a minute, I'll take the transponder snail to Pop's yoi. Marco says while Luffy hears the footsteps later on. Gurarararara. Brat, why did you wanted to call me? Reports I suppose? Whitebeard says as he laughs. Luffy swears that he hears Whitebeard drinking rum in the middle of a conversation. No, just to irritate you. Luffy sarcastically says as he hears Whitebeard and some laughs at the other side. And I'm not a brat, I'm in the same age as you. Luffy added as he hears Whitebeard laugh. Gurararara. Whitebeard laughs as the others followed. After a few minutes Whitebeard turns serious. Enough about that. What do you want to know? Whitebeard says with a serious tone and expression. First, did Thatch got a hold of the Yami no am I now? Luffy asks with the same tone and expression as Whitebeard. He would have called Thatch, Thatchy, if it wasn't an important conversation right now. No, not yet. Thatch is on a mission right now though. Whitebeard responds as Luffy took the information on his mind. A tense atmosphere came for a minute. Is Ace a commander now? Luffy asks. Excitement completely obvious in his tone. He hears Whitebeard and the others laugh again. The tense atmosphere was gone. Yes he is, but he isn't here. We left him and told him he can't join. He's sulking in the corner somewhere right now. Marco answers while Luffy laughs from the answer. He'll probably annoy and ask us what was it that he wasn't able to know. Luffy hears Izo say as the others laughed and he hears says some commanders say things in agreement. I see, Luffy says quietly as he remembers an important question. How's Teach doing? He asks quietly, but everyone heard it. The tense atmosphere was back once again. He's not doing anything that's making us wary of him, for now. Whitebeard says as Luffy nods in acknowledgement. That's all I need, for now. My Nakama might ask me what I'm doing right now. I can't let them getting suspicious of me. Bye Giant Asen. Everyone, Luffy said cheerily as the others said their goodbyes. Luffy placed the handset back to its rightful place. He stood up and stretched as he exercises for a little. Luffy's taking his time in his room. Zoro says as they haven't seen their captain yet. He's probably looking around his room. The captain's room is quite big. Usopp responds as his stomach growls. It's been a long time since they've bid their goodbyes to Kaya and the others in the syrup village. They haven't eaten yet. Usopp took a food inside the refrigerator and ate in the table. Still, isn't he taking a look a bit too long? I mean, the captain's room might be big, but it can't be that big, right? Nami says in suspicion. Usopp quietly agreed. Nami had another question though. Don't get suspicious of Luffy, he might be mysterious sometimes, but he's our captain. And if he keeps secrets then it's his decision to tell us, and knowing Luffy, he only keeps secrets if it's necessary. Zoro growls. Nami gulped and nodded as Usopp did the same. After a few minutes, Luffy came. He was massaging his shoulder while exercising his hands next. Ah, I'm hungry, we really need a cook. Luffy says, as usual, he plopped himself on a chair as he went back on massaging his shoulder. Zoro and the two raised an eyebrow on that. Why do you keep massaging your shoulder? Zoro asks. Luffy laughed at the question though, which Nami and Zoro for not getting the answer quickly. I'm preparing for another training, you guys need to train. Luffy said as he grins. Nami and Zoro shuddered since they felt Luffy's training even in just one session. Zoro was quite excited though. Usopp had no absolute idea how scary Luffy's pieces of training are, so he laughed. I, the incredible Usopp, shall join the training. I will show you how incredible I am. Usopp said as the two looked at him with pity, knowing Usopp would later know how scary of a teacher, trainer Luffy is. Usopp now know why Nami and Zoro shuddered when Luffy said to train with him. Luffy didn't give them a break after all the beatings they had from Luffy. Finally, it felt like forever though, Luffy finally gave them a break. Luffy's scary, Usopp kept repeating while they were on a break. Nami and Zoro had felt pity for Usopp, since he almost looked like he had a trauma of Luffy's pieces of training, which might be possible for him right now. Not like Nami and Zoro could say they weren't having a very hard time on Luffy's training. Nami, Zoro, and Usopp had bruises everywhere because Luffy whacked them while they had to be freaking blindfolded along the way, and Luffy shooting them with rocks didn't help either. Except, Zoro had the hardest training among the three, which Nami noticed. "Can I ask a question?" Nami asks as she winced when she felt her bruises quite painfully. Luffy looked at her, Luffy nodded, indicating she can ask. "Why is Zoro's training was the hardest among the three of us?" Nami asked. Usopp turned, quite interested why. Luffy laughs at them. Luffy looked at Zoro and grins, which didn't go unnoticed by all of them. Luffy looked at Zoro's beaten form. "You guys need to get ready for Paradise and New World," Luffy thought as he remembers the scenes which made him remember the nightmares. "Zoro's the strongest among the three of you, and he's been following the training I gave him after I met him in his island. It's only natural that I need to make him a harder training than the two of you. After all, he can use Kenbunshoku and Bushoshoku Haki quite fine, he just needs to train more to hone it." Luffy explained, which Nami and Zoro got the point. Usopp just felt completely stranded. "Wait, Haki? What's Haki and what's those Kenbunshoku and Bushoshoku Haki?" Usopp asks as Luffy facepalmed. "I forgot I haven't told him yet," Luffy thought as he sat. "I'm giving extra minutes of break," Luffy declares, which made Nami and Usopp happy. Zoro just slept. "I'm going to explain Haki to Usopp. You guys can do everything you want," Luffy said as he pulled Usopp, who thought that he can also rest. After a day of explaining Haki to Usopp, they all slept except for Luffy, who just took a coffee and didn't sleep. And this day was just usual, making the pirate flag again and etc., before Usopp fired a cannon. Well, they were in the lounge and it was peaceful until a shout came. "Come out, you damn pirates. I'm gonna slaughter all of you," a person shouts outside. Usopp dropped his cup as Luffy opened the door and saw Johnny kicking the barrels. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're just doing?" Luffy says calmly with a grin. But everyone knew underneath it was annoyance and anger. "Who am I should be asking," Johnny says as he stares at Luffy. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Johnny shouts as he swings his sword to Luffy. Luffy didn't want going married to have a scar yet, so he doesn't dodge. He takes the sword, flips Johnny and plants a foot on Johnny's back to prevent him from going mad any further. "Calm down, I don't want going married to get wrecked," Luffy says calmly as he watches Johnny struggling. "Shut up, you kill." Before Johnny could continue shouting, Zoro went outside, to confirm that he sensed Johnny. "Huh? Oh, it is you, Johnny? Where's Yosaku? Isn't he with you?" Zoro says, not minding that Luffy was currently trapping Johnny. It was Johnny who started it. Zoro Aniki. "Is that really you, Aniki?" Johnny shouts in surprise as he rotated his head to be able to see Zoro. "They know each other," Usopp says quietly as he and Nami looked outside in surprise as they heard it. "Just what's going on?" Nami asks to know. "Oh no. Yosaku is," Johnny says with a terrified and sad tone as he looks at Zoro. Sick. Usopp and Nami shouts as Yosaku was in front of them, on the ground. "Yeah, his teeth have begun to fall out, and his old wounds have reopened." Johnny pauses as he placed his hand in his head, thinking what happened to make Yosaku in a state like that. "I just don't know what to do anymore. I was trying to at least let him get some rest on top of that rock, but..." Johnny pauses. All of a sudden, this ship fired a cannonball at us. As Johnny said it, Usopp's eye bulged out and his mouth dropped to the ground. "I am truly sorry," Usopp says as he bows down while he was crying. Johnny sniffed. "It's fine, what's done is done." Johnny pauses as he took a deep breath. If all problems could be solved with a simple apology, there wouldn't be any need for policemen. He let all out as Usopp cries. Luffy sighed. He was casually sitting in a barrel while leaning on the wall with a newspaper on his hands. He could read after all. He only has a scurvy, a disease caused by a lack of vitamin C and characterized by spongy gums, loosening of the teeth, and a bleeding into the skin and mucous membranes. Luffy says with a deadpan tone as he flipped another page. Everyone was looking at him. It was so quiet Luffy had to look at what happened. Nami had widened eyes with her face showing disbelief of how Luffy was able to say things like that. The same goes for Zoro and Usopp. But Johnny saw hope. Is there a way to solve it?" Johnny asks as he looked at Luffy, who placed the newspaper on the other barrel as he looked at Johnny. "Yep, limes," Luffy says as he grins. Johnny grins while crying after that. After Luffy and the others gave limes to Yosaku, which he recovered too fast. Then next Yosaku and Johnny introduced themselves. They told about how they worked with Zoro a long time ago as bounty hunters. Yosaku, of course, fainted as blood came in his mouth. They talked about chefs and stuff. Then Johnny raised his hands. "Aniki," Johnny says as he raises his arms like he was in a school while Zoro looks at him. "What is it, Johnny?" Zoro asks Johnny as he side glances at Johnny. "If you're looking for a cook, I know just the place," Of course, getting one to join you is another matter altogether. Johnny says as the others looked at him like he gave them the best gifts ever, except for Luffy, who just grinned. A restaurant of the seas, they all exclaimed, except Luffy, which made them look weirdly at him for a moment. That's right, you should be able to reach it from here 2 to 3 days. But that place is close to the Grand Line, so you gotta be careful. Lot of dangerous guys around those parts. Johnny pauses. Even that hawk-eyed man you've been looking for has been sighted there once before. At those words, Zoro widened his eyes as his body was aching for battle. If it's alright with you, I'll lead the way, Johnny says as everyone pumped their fists at the air, but Luffy joined this time. Alright, everyone shouted in excitement, but somewhere deep in Luffy's heart, he was still remembering the dark memories, and he wasn't ready for another scene where Zoro almost died.